Welcome to 10,000 Miles. Tonight's guest is the co-CEO of Omni Interactions, Courtney Meyers. I first met Courtney back in December of last year. We were at the Sundance Resort in Utah at a conference. I got to learn more about Omni Interactions and meet Courtney and her co-CEO, Karen, personally. We've developed a nice business relationship over the past few months, and I have a ton of respect for her. You're going to learn all about her tenacity, all about her experience serving in the military as a medic, how she clawed her way up from the bottom to the top, taking on anything she could find as a challenge. But you're going to learn about the hustle. And we talk a lot about the difference between work and hustle. Let's dive in. Hey folks, thanks for tuning into the show. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, the Podcast Index, and Podcasting 2.0. We'd really appreciate if you download Fountain, find us there, and support us via Value for Value. We hope you enjoy the show. Happy listening. Courtney, welcome to the show tonight. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you so much for making the time to come on the show tonight. Super appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here.
That's great. Hey, I hear, little bird told me that you have a cocktail ready for the evening.
I sure do.
That time of day. Oh, what do you, yeah. First, little cheers. Ching, little cheers. Okay. Take a sip, then tell me what you have.
I have a ranch water. So I've got Topo Chico, a little tequila, and a little blood orange bitters.
What kind of tequila you're drinking?
Casamigos.
Nice. Blanco, Reposado?
Reposado.
All right. I am drinking, and this was actually a little sneaky drink tonight. I drink Dobel Maestro Diamante tequila. It's a Reposado, but it's triple filtered, so it's clear.
Ooh,
so you wouldn't think it's Reposado. And you would think, I'm under a rock, but I just heard that a drink called the Paloma is tequila and ruby red grapefruit juice. Didn't know that. So I was looking for grapefruit juice tonight, see if I had any. You see, it's got a little pink tinge to it. Mm-hmm. We didn't have any, but we had this big giant container of peeled grapefruit that had a ton of juice in it. So I poured some of that in it. I got to tell you, fantastic. So here's to a great night. Cheers.
Cheers.
For the audience, Courtney, they don't have the benefit I do of having gotten to know you over the last 8 months. Why don't you tell people who you are, what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I'm Courtney Meyers. I'm currently the co-CEO at Omni Interactions. Prior to that, I've spent a good chunk of my career in the call center space, which I fell into totally accidentally after getting out of the Army, where I was a medic. I grew up in Colorado. I live in Southwest Colorado today. I enjoy skiing, running. My new puppy is consuming my life, so that's been an adjustment. But yeah, I'm married. I've got a couple dogs, a couple cats, and really just love the outdoors and love what we do here at Omni.
Fantastic. I know, again, because I've gotten to know you over the past several months, there's so much more to Courtney Meyers. You have first of all, you're like a bright star. You're always smiling. I've never seen you in a bad mood. I'm sure it happens if we pulled your husband in. I'm sure he's going to tell us, right, or somebody else. But at least in the interactions we've had, you're super upbeat. You're positive. You're a creative thinker. I know that comes from somewhere, and these come-froms happened a long time ago. So aside from your drive to become a CEO of a company and lead an organization, your optimism, your attitude, your go get 'em, all of these things that have made you successful. Where did all that start? How did it happen? Take us back to the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up, my dad was an entrepreneur, and so he actually took me with him he was a pilot also. So he took me on lots of his trips. We'd fly around in this little airplane when I was growing up. And so I kind of had this role model, I guess, in so many words, that I kind of saw the ups and downs. Like he sold phone lines, so we'd literally go to car dealerships, to hospitals, and I'd sit in the in the lobby of the car dealership as like a 7-year-old, and he would go in and try to sell them phone lines. And so
Holy
sometimes
cow.
sometimes it would be great, sometimes it would be, obviously we know how sales is not great. And so
Yeah.
I think he was probably the first kind of person that really showed me, like, you just keep going, you just keep rolling forward. There's good, there's bad, but that doesn't change it doesn't change the hour, the day, the month, any of those things. And so he really instilled in me as he called them, the 3 C's: calm, cool, and collected.
Oh,
And so
nice.
I think that was probably the starting point of just, seeing someone that, rolled with the punches, and he always generally has a good attitude as well. And so I would say that that's probably largely where a lot of it started. And then, I think just learning to love, I mean, I love being outside. I love where I live, kind of in the mountains, because I love to be outside. And I think when you spend more time outside as well, like in nature, and it's hard not to feel positive and excited and like, wow, I'm so fortunate to, be out on this trail today instead of
Yeah.
doing
It's a,
something different. Right. So, so I think it's just a combination of, I had a great role model, and just, I try to, I guess, live with gratitude, right? And make sure that I'm constantly thinking about, like, I'm just thankful I'm healthy and I'm here and I get to do these things. And just try to remind myself of that when maybe when my attitude goes south, which it does in fact do.
I'm smiling because when I met my wife, maybe not the first night I went to her parents' house, but when maybe second or third time, her dad had a shirt on, T-shirt, and it said C C C, had 3 C's on it. So when you said the 3 C's, I'm like, oh, it's going to be the same 3 C's. His was cash, comfort, and convenience.
Nice. Okay.
I guess we all have the 3 C's, but I like them both. It's funny.
Yeah, actually, I think they all work together nicely.
They sure do. They sure do. So you grew up in an environment where you saw the entrepreneurial spirit, knocking door to door. That's tough work. Um, I, I have a massive respect for it. The art of the sale is difficult. Sure, obviously, that, but you have to have a resiliency for it. You can't take it personally. It's, your pops walked into the dealership, and if they didn't need phone lines, it's like, I'm going to the next one,
Go
right?
to the
So,
next one. Yeah.
but if they needed him, he was there at the right time. And that's a lot like what we do.
Yep. Yeah, that hasn't changed in sales even one bit, right? I mean, it's all about timing and just
Yep.
knocking on the doors, today often virtually, but it's the same concept.
Yeah. So you had a good example, an entrepreneurial father, watching, rejection and, shaking the dust off and keep moving on. Let's keep it going. Take me from there. What did you do from there?
Yeah. So we moved a lot when I was growing up. We kind of moved to where the business was. So I think that built a lot of resiliency in me. I grew up in Parker, Colorado until about, we moved between my 7th and 8th grade year, which is right in the dead smack in the middle of middle school. So,
Yeah.
not a great time to move, as you can imagine, for like a 12-year-old girl. So we moved to San Antonio, which I like to joke, right? I didn't even know what a hairdryer was in Colorado. I got to San Antonio, and all of a sudden I looked like that clown on The Simpsons, right? My red hair was just enormous. So,
Humidity.
the humidity, like, that had never been a problem for me. So again, you start 8th grade, and it's like all of a sudden, and in Colorado, all the kids wore like more skater clothes. It was just, more cool, relaxed environment. Start 8th grade in San Antonio, and the girls are in like pencil skirts. So
Yeah.
I think that was actually like a very formative year for me from a resiliency standpoint, because you just like, I had to relearn so much in terms of, what it looks like to fit in here and what it looks like to change. And I think my sense of humor evolved a lot that year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, just my experiences, growing up, moving, having to kind of make new friends, continue to, fit in new places, that I think that while it was very hard growing up, obviously, I mean, I never really, I always had had, what I wanted, what I needed, all of those
Yeah.
things. But it, I do think it built a lot of character, and it really taught me a lot about just, you know, being adaptable and resilient and grit. And you just, it is what it is, and you shake it off and you move forward. So I'm thankful for that as an adult. Obviously, again, as an eighth grader, it's harder to be thankful for those things. But looking back, it built a lot of character in me. So, and then, we spent a few years in San Antonio, moved back to Colorado, right smack in the middle of high school, which again was not great.
But you got your hairdo back, so
But I
it was
got my
good.
hair back, so that was great.
Okay.
You win some, you lose some, right? But again, I just learned a lot through those experiences, and I think that really set me up for success, kind of going into college and into the Army, things like that, because I had learned to be very adaptable in different situations at a young age.
Yeah, I'm a grinning again. I can relate to the Colorado to Texas move, not firsthand from a fashion perspective, but secondhand, because when we moved, I lived in Highlands Ranch for 3 years.
Yeah.
So when we were leaving New Jersey, my son was just getting into skateboarding. When we got to Colorado, he went full bore skater. Okay.
Yeah.
And, he had all his buddies that were skating away, wore the skate clothes, the skinny jeans, the t-shirts, 9 million skateboards around my house, longer hair. So here we are. We moved to South Lake, Texas. It's a very sporty town, right? Football is God, and it's very sports minded. And so Alex shows up at school. He's got long hair. He's got the whole thing, and he comes home, and he's like, the first month he's miserable. He's just completely miserable. Well, the good news is that he meets a kid 5 houses down who's like the other skater in town. He's still friends with this kid, Blaze Eldridge. Blaze is an unbelievable guy, but he's still friends with him to this day. But he comes home one day and he was like really upset. He goes crying. And I'm like, what are you crying about? Everybody here, they all wear Under Armour. I hate Under Armour. He despised it. I think it might have been in 6th grade at the time. But 2 years later, he's going to school in Under Armour. Like, I didn't force him to wear anything, but and then he still skated, but he just changed his vibe. And believe it or not, still here in town, there was at that time there was a hair policy. Boys couldn't have hair, below their shoulder, and the girls couldn't wear skirts that went past their knuckles. And my daughter used to go, this skirt's fine, and pull her arms up. I'm like, no, it is not fine. So
I actually got sent home on the first day of 8th grade in San Antonio because I swear my shirt was compliant, but the straps weren't exactly 3 fingers according to the measurement. And so not only was I in this new place, realizing how not just like your son's experience, but then I actually got pulled into the principal's office on my first day of 8th grade in the new school. And they called my mom, and they said I either had to go home or she had to bring me a new shirt. So
welcome
very
to
rough
school.
start.
Very rough start. You know what happened on my son's first day of school?
What?
My wife drops him off at school. See, in that school, it was at Mia's school. Well, it's an elementary school, like right outside my development here. I think they were both in it. No, my son was just in it. Drops him off, first day of school. She drives 1 mile up the road, goes to the supermarket. As she's coming back, the entire school is covered with police, helicopters above. First day of school. And she sees the kids like single filing out of the school to the church, just slightly down the road. She's like, oh my God, what is going on? They got the whole place barricaded off. Well, some kid brought in a novelty grenade.
Oh my Lord.
But at some point, it was an actual grenade, but it was drilled out, and it was clearly not a live grenade. And he brought it in, thought it wasn't asked to bring it in, but thought it was like show and tell. And everybody didn't know it was not a live grenade. Well, there's a grenade here. So the Dallas News choppers are over the school. My wife is panicking. Everybody's going crazy. So it's tough moving as a kid, man. But it builds a character. I've seen it in my own kids and the way they interact with people, and it's super cool.
Yep. No, you got to build that character. It's painful at the time, but it yields dividends later.
Big time. Where'd you go to college?
So I started at CU Boulder, University of Colorado Boulder, and then I I didn't really like college. I thought I would. I always wanted to go to CU Boulder. I mean, even when we lived in San Antonio, I was like, I'm going to CU Boulder. Like that, I'm going to be a Buffalo. Like that was in my mind.
Nice.
I
Okay.
went there. I spent the first year and a half there. And then the first summer, I love back to the outdoors thing. So the first summer, I actually got a Canadian work visa and I lived on Vancouver Island as a
Oh,
cave
wow.
guide in a tent. And
Really? In a tent.
in a tent, literally in a tent.
Okay.
So then I went back to school for my sophomore year, and I was just antsy. Like I just wanted to do something different. And I was actually watching the show U.S. Coast Guard Rescue, where they, rappel out of the helicopters into the
Yeah.
ocean and they're
Hmm.
rescuing people in these crazy situations. And I guess in my mind, despite growing up in Colorado and having, really very little exposure to the ocean, I thought that's what I want to do. So,
Okay.
you can't know what happens in the mind of a 19-year-old. So we go to the Coast Guard recruiter. They say you actually don't get to choose your job in the Coast Guard. Like you could end up like doing laundry. So that non-starter for me. So we ended up going to some of the other branches and ended up in the Army. And I loved medic things. So I was pre-med in school. And so I ended up joining the Army as a medic. So I did another semester of college before I went to basic training. Went to basic training after my sophomore year of college. And I originally had joined the reserves. I had this whole plan where I was going to finish college, go to medical school. And then I had so much fun, like running around in the woods. And I went to Fort Jackson for basic training and then Fort Sam Houston for medical school. And
Where's Fort Jackson?
South Carolina.
Okay. Hot.
Hot. Yeah. Yeah. I went in summer, so it was hot. But
what was that movie? Africa Hot.
Africa
yeah,
Hot.
yeah,
Yes.
Africa Hot.
So I had so much fun. I came back. I had to go from the reserves to active duty. It's like a whole nother process. So I did another semester of college. And then I signed up to go active duty, which my parents were extremely upset about because I was, at this point I'm 20 years old, right? Thinking I've got it all figured out. And I was just dead set on either Fort Bragg or Fort Campbell. Like I either want to be in the 82nd or the 101st Airborne or Air Assault. They're deploying a lot. I really wanted to deploy. So I ended up going to Fort Campbell after about 2.5 years of college. Got to Fort Campbell and realized, oh my God, I've made a terrible mistake. This is so different than, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Like there was in basic training. It was 8 weeks. Medic school is, perfect. Medic school is 16
weeks. We
weeks.
love puppies, by the way. It's
yes,
fine.
I know. I might need to take
it. No, it's fine. Courtney has an amazing new puppy, and we love puppies, so we're rolling with it.
Yes. But anyway, so I immediately went back to school. I started going to school at night. Like I'd go to my day job in the Army, and then they had a satellite campus at Austin Peay State University on the base at Fort Campbell. Okay. So I kind of just kept chugging along through my degree. And so I finished school at Austin Peay State University in Tennessee.
Did you deploy?
I did. I spent a year in Ramadi, Iraq.
Oh, wow. Was there conflict at the time?
Yes, I was there April of 2008 to May of 2009. So a lot of the really, really terrible stuff, that the whole kind of the surge going into Ramadi and Fallujah was over, but certainly still a lot going on. And it was kind of interesting, a very interesting experience for me. I was, a female assigned to a military police company, which turns out is sort of the loophole into women in infantry. So,
okay.
So we actually went to the police stations in Ramadi and Fallujah to teach the Iraqi police how to be police people, I guess. So we did a lot of things with the detainees. We did a lot of patrols with the Iraqi police. And then I was the only female medic on the base. Ramadi is actually a Marine base, and it's not really set up for like a 12-month deployment. It's the Marines deploy 6 months at a time. So I got tasked out to the Marine infantry a lot because I was the only female medic. So I did, we would just cruise out into the desert in Humvees, literally sleep on top of the Humvees in the middle of the desert, and then go to some small town and set up checkpoints. and just do like checkpoint operations and searches and things in these small towns. So it was kind of a crazy experience because I kind of realized, wow, I kind of
Wow.
got thrown in a way that maybe is a little bit atypical for a female medic in terms of where you'd typically be assigned.
Did you have to do medic stuff?
Not some, but I was
Okay.
fortunate, not a ton. Let me say it that way.
Okay. All right. Good. So you make it through that. You come out. I mean, what was a takeaway from a military experience? You know, what do you think that came out of that entire experience that's with you today?
I think a lot of resiliency. I think a lot of thankfulness. I think back to like, why do I have a positive attitude? It's like I've seen hell. I've
Yeah.
kind of been through these things that you just go, how could you not be thankful? How could you not wake up each day and be thankful, right? So I think there's that, but I think I grew up so much. I mean, I spent my 22nd birthday in Iraq, and you just can't even imagine, just from a maturity standpoint, how that
Yeah.
changes, like how that changes everything and just your perspective on life in terms of, like what hardship is and what challenges are and things like that. You just learn a lot of resiliency and grit again, kind of through that experience. Because you have no choice. Like, you're just there and you just have to do what you have to do every single day. And that's that.
It didn't look like Colorado.
It did not. No. And talk about heat again. It was extremely hot. That was a whole new level of hot.
Really? What were the temperatures there?
I mean, in like in the sun, you'd be at 130 easily.
What? Holy cow.
I remember when it came to winter and it dropped down to like 65. I mean, we had layers of jackets on. It was, it totally shifts your whole perspective on what heat feels like and what cold what you suddenly think is cold.
What kind of puppy is that, by the way?
He is a Dutch Shepherd Malinois mix.
And that coat is like a brindle, right? Is that what they call that?
Yeah, that's the Dutch Shepherd.
Yeah, that's a good looking puppy.
He's a beautiful dog. He's only about 3.5 months old.
All right. So a lot of resiliency in the military. And 130 degrees. That's crazy. How do you guys,
was
gotta be hard to stay hydrated in that.
You'd come back from a patrol, and of course you're wearing, body armor, your ammo's strapped onto your body armor, got your backpack. I got my medic backpack. And I mean, every inch of that uniform would be absolutely soaked, drenched. I mean, it was incredibly hard to stay hydrated. And I mean,
probably chewing on salt all day long, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Just drinking as much water as you can, eating as much salty food, things like that, and just trying your best.
Yeah. So you spent a year there, right?
Yep. About 13 months.
Okay. You come back, then what?
So I had one more semester of my undergrad. So I finished my undergrad, few classes that were lab classes that I couldn't take in Iraq. I had continued classes online the whole time I was in Iraq, which is interesting. Okay. So I get back, I get into a master's at DU, University of Denver. And I thought to myself, I just want to work in an office building. I'd never worked in an office, right? I'd had these kind of outdoor jobs. So I just thought, I just want to work in an office building. Like, I see these giant office buildings. Yeah. I know people working there.
It's not 130 degrees.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have to wear body armor. I don't have to carry a gun. It's air conditioned. People seem to make lots of money in those buildings, a lot more money than you make as like private first class Myers, So that was about the level of framework I had around what happens next. So I thought, I'm going to start my business degree and I'm going to figure out how to work in one of these air conditioned offices and type on a computer all day. So
I love it.
So I actually ended up asking my aunt, who in Denver, she's in Denver, she knows a lot of people, and I said, do you know anyone that, I can be an intern? I have my because the GI Bill pays you a stipend. I don't even need to be paid. I just need to figure out what happens inside an office building. Like I have no concept of what you could possibly type on a computer all day. So enter the call center world. So her So her son went to school with a person named Chris Carrington's son, and he was the CEO of Alpine Access, which was one of the original work from home call center companies. And so
Okay.
he agrees to interview me. I basically said, look, I don't need money. I'm not leaving. Just let me file papers. Let me like get coffee. Just let me be here so I can figure out what happens here. And he agreed. And
Wow.
so I started there as an intern. And that was how I ended up in this business.
That's
Just total
incredible.
happenstance.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, what about the business did you like? What about the office building? Was it everything you thought it was? Was it less? Was it more?
Um, I still kind of couldn't sit still. So I stayed in Denver for about a year and a half. I finished my master's, and then I actually got into a doctorate program at George Washington University in DC.
Mm-hmm.
So they were nice enough to let me move out there and keep my job. I really liked being in it. I liked the office. I liked the environment. Everyone they were wonderful people. But again, as you can see, I'm kind of not cut out to just keep doing the same thing over and over again. So, I learned a lot. I started in the training department there, and I was actually once they gave me a real job, I was the continuous improvement analyst for training. So I
Okay.
looked at all our training classes, things like that. And then I started to just kind of like find my own projects that I thought would be worthwhile, looking at like some of the leaders, like the team lead kind of level and some different things. So then I got moved into a different department where I started to, look more at like the leadership and how we could improve our kind of frontline leaders and things like that. And then actually the Alpine had committed through the Joining Forces initiative to hire like 3,000 military attached over 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So then they put me in charge of that. So that was a really great experience because I was able to move to Washington, D.C., work on my doctorate. And then I did a lot of things with the VA. I was a research assistant and wrote a paper around veterans transitioning onto college campuses. And so I was able to kind of build a lot of great pipelines to help support that. And then I was responsible for kind of reporting on our progress, those types of things. So I was able to nicely segue, I guess,
Amazing.
kind of a lot of different things into kind of a new role I learned a lot, and it was very exciting. And so I was fortunate early in my career, I guess, to get to see a lot of different areas of the business from training to kind of the frontline supervisors and how that works to kind of how a recruiting pipeline works. And I was also responsible for, kind of our pipeline around hiring people with disabilities. And so I was actually nominated for a White House Champions of Change Award. So I got
Come
invited
on.
to the White House, and I didn't win, but it was a really neat experience to get invited to the White House.
Recount.
Exactly. Fake,
Yeah.
fake election. So
Oh, man. Hey, I wanted to ask a question because
yeah.
I'm really actually moved by the work that you did there to hire all those veterans. What's it like coming back from working in the military, serving, and trying to re-assimilate into the workforce? And I want to give you a little bit about what I know,
Okay.
and it's not a lot, all right? But I have an uncle that served in Vietnam, in the thick of everything. And I remember as a young boy, and listen, my uncle, he's still alive today. He's an amazing guy. He calls me his best friend. I mean, he and I are so close and so tight. We spend a lot of time together when we can. And he's never talked about what happened in Vietnam until he stayed with me for a month when I was 58. Okay. So a couple of years back, never talked about it. He told me shit he didn't even tell his wife. My aunt has passed away since. But I knew nothing about what the veterans go through, the combat veterans go through. And then, I remember as a kid, though, because it was when he came back, it was 71. I was 7. I remember him sending these little tapes, and you hear his recorded voice. And sometimes he sounded okay. Sometimes, man, I used to have nightmares about getting drafted as a kid, hearing my uncle like sound so down and depressed and all this stuff. And he went through a lot coming back and re-assimilating. Now, for him, the blessing was that before he had to serve, he worked for the power company in New York called Con Edison. Con Edison carried his service, and his job was waiting for him when he came back.
Great.
And he worked his way up from being a meter reader to a high voltage troubleshooter through his career. I think he was there almost 40 years before he finally retired. But so he was busy. He met an amazing woman. He had an amazing marriage. He raised 3 great kids. Like, he lived his life. But this was always there, and we had a lot of talks. We did a lot of projects when we were at my house. He's very handy, and we spent a lot of time in the garage. I had no idea what he went through. I mean, zero. He was the funkle, right? He was a fun guy. He's always upbeat, right? Never would talk about it. Just wouldn't talk about it. But I learned what he went through. So you having seen, action, been around, hot place, and then having been attached to helping people come back and get jobs and assimilate, that had to be unbelievable for you. That had to be amazing.
It really was. I think obviously that was, gosh, almost 17 years ago, something like that. And so I think a lot of that, it's amazing how I was so young at the time too, that I think that's part of it, right? When you say your uncle didn't tell you until so much later, I think in a lot of ways, so many people do these things when they're very young. And I don't think as a young person in your early 20s, like I said, I spent my 22nd birthday in Iraq. I don't think you even know how to unpack a lot of that. And I think it takes a very long time to try to really reconcile everything, because one, you live in a state of you're literally living in a state of fear for an entire year of your life, where there's mortars, you're laying in bed and there's mortars. You're surrounded by concrete pillars, and you're just going, okay, don't hit this, metal trailer, right? Yeah. So you just I don't even think you can, and I'll get to your question, but I don't even think you can
please
unpack
take
that
your time.
like as a young person. And I think that's where it's very hard for people to, even understand or conceptualize how that takes kind of from an adaptation standpoint. So I'm not terribly surprised to hear, it took your uncle so long to just start to even open up about that. But
let me interject something, if you don't mind. So here's the thing too, that I could, first of all, females are the superior gender, because the development of a female is scientifically proven far more advanced at an early age than a man. Is what it is. And, is why, you could see that in any teenager. Girls are much more mature, they're well put together, and boys are spinning around in chairs doing stupid stuff, right? And we all have those stories. But the science around frontal lobe development, reason, logic, critical thinking, right? This has now been, and we've known about it for a long time, but you read the studies and you read the information about, they don't think in some males it's fully developed until 26 years old. And now you read some of the recent studies, that's even shifting out further. Yeah. I don't know what the cause and causation is of that, but it's not uncommon. I got to imagine that, Game Boys and things alike that are, probably more played by young boys than young girls, might have something to do with it. But, you're taking these young people and you're putting them in these situations that require this heavy critical thinking, and just scientifically, genetically, a lot of people aren't ready for it. And there's no test for it. They're not ready for it.
Yep.
No.
And not just critical thinking, but emotional intelligence, right? Because you sort of have to, just even about yourself, inward emotional intelligence around just trying to kind of figure out how you wake up each day and do it again. And it was interesting, when you're there, because you do see people that become totally paralyzed. They can't go out on patrol. There is no world where they can go out on patrol because they're they are paralyzed by the fear of walking down the streets of Ramadi, which is very reasonable, obviously, but it is
Yeah.
interesting to see how people kind of react. Other people say, if I die, I die. Other people are like, I'm going to be laser focused, right? Head on a swivel. So
Yeah.
you get the whole breadth of reactions as you get there and you start to do more things and you're out and exposed in different ways. And that you do start to see that people are on there's a broad spectrum there of how people react to that and what that starts to look like. And then how that whole day one when you're there to day 300, again, very, very different in terms of what how people are acting and reacting and things like that. So it's very, very interesting.
Courtney, I forgot to say thank you. And I'm getting a little choked up. I mean, I have a massive appreciation for the men and women that serve this country. I think the best war is no war. I think we'd all agree with that. And we're just not all in control of all things that are going on around the world. And much as I'd love a kumbaya cross countries, I mean, I pray for that day.
Yeah.
But thank you for your service. Thank you for what you did. And I couldn't imagine that level of fear for a year and to come out with a smile on your face like when I met you back in the winter and to still have it every day I see you. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you saying that.
All right. So now that I can pull myself together, I'm sorry. So so back to the question,
Yep.
It had to feel great helping people get into a workforce and, assimilate back into like careers and jobs and things alike.
It did. And it's amazing how, I mean, there's the side of it we just talked about, but there's a very functional side of it as well that's challenging. And, like when I started at Alpine, I had no idea how to I'd never used Outlook. I'd never scheduled a meeting. I had never, there were so many things that just these really small functional things that I had absolutely no idea how to do or what the protocol was or anything. So fortunately, I there were a lot of really wonderful people there that pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you can't just schedule that meeting. You gotta, you gotta do this, this, and this." But there was a big learning curve in terms of just how you work with others in an office environment technologically, just all of that. So, there's so many great programs out there, I think, that, that have evolved over the years too, that help support veterans and, that try to teach some of those skills and give people maybe a softer landing, so to speak,
Sure.
into those environments. But it did feel really great. And it felt great. I love that all of the jobs and all of our jobs still are, they're work from home, right? And so really allows people, especially people with disabilities, disabled veterans, caregivers, or military spouses, right? Really the backbone of the military are the spouses that are supporting the families and taking care of that. And so really ensuring that they have an opportunity for some gainful employment that they can do more flexibly from home, and that's portable and they can take it with them.
So you did this at your company. Did you complete your doctorate?
I did not. So
Okay.
I ran out of GI Bill.
Okay.
And I had a few personal challenges and I ended up moving back to Denver after about a year and a
I'm
half.
going to still call you Dr. Myers from now on. I'm sorry.
Well, it would technically be inaccurate, but
well, I call my business partner Steve Dr. Gerhardt. I used to introduce him when I was a customer of his for many, many years before I joined the company. And he would come to an office and, he was always pulling rabbits out of the hat for us from a telecom perspective. We'd be opening a new location. We'd do new connectivity. Nobody could get it for us. He'd get it for us in like 2 weeks. So I would introduce people and say, by the way, this is Dr. Gerhardt. and they go, oh, I said, yeah, he's the only person in the United States with a PhD in telephony. I said, Dr. Gerhardt, how are you? We would laugh like, and then I had a friend who was the CIO of a college, and there was a lot of doctors there, and they wanted to be called doctor. And so I said I would call him Dr. Ragu because Dr. Ragu. And so I would show up and he was not a PhD, but there were a lot of PhDs at the college. And when I'd show up, there was an assistant there. And, oh, are you here to see, who are you here to see? I'm here to see Dr. Ragu. And so I did that like 3 or 4 times, and they started calling him Dr. Ragu. He's like, dude, you're going to get me fired. You can't do this. There's a big deal here.
That's funny.
Oh, it was great. So you worked through that. You just helped through this program. You got board 3,000 jobs, veterans. Let's continue. What's happening?
So that company got purchased by Sykes at the time. Now, well, then Sitel, then now Found Ever. But so I went through the acquisition, and I would say I moved back to Denver. I was restless again. That turned into kind of big corporate life, right? I mean, Alpine was a smaller, more dynamic organization, and so after some period of time, I decided I was ready to try the world on my own. So I left and I started a business.
You did? What did you start?
It was called Movanti, and we focused on kind of recruiting, kind of a headhunting, and then we did some training developments for small businesses. So I brought a couple of people with me and just like hoofed it out on the road, right? I mean, I just kind of figured it out as, gosh, I was 27 maybe, and just thought, I think I can do this. And then my boss he was the COO of Alpine and then went on to run a big part of Sykes, Rob Duncan. He founded Omni and called me, and I actually rolled Movanti into Omni.
Oh, okay.
And that was how I joined Omni. So very shortly after he started it, and that was 2016, and we've been kind of building it brick by brick and bringing many other great people on. But
that's amazing.
Yep.
That's fantastic. So you how did you like being a person who started a business, an entrepreneur on your own? Like, yeah, I can relate. Obviously, that. What did you learn along that way?
You learn that you just say yes and figure it out. I'd say if there was one thing, it's things are not perfect. I remember I got my first client actually because someone confused me with a different Courtney, and then they had already introduced me to the company, and then they go, they actually tried to take it back and said, oh shoot, no, it was supposed to be this other Courtney, and I was like, nope, too late. I'm gonna figure this out.
I'm the one you need.
That was yep. This Courtney is already on us. Has already been introduced, and this Courtney's going for it. So, so that was how I got my first client, and they ended up being a great client. They were my client for actually a number of years. But you just figure it out, right? And you just kind of you get in somewhere. You try to figure out how you can continue to, like a little mouse, right? You dig deeper and deeper, and so
yep.
So there's a lot of learning just from that standpoint around just client management and those types of things. And then I learned that the business part of it is really painful. I mean, I do not like the accounting side. I do not, so some of the detailed parts of it, I struggled with around just managing mail. I hate mail. Like, I hate receiving mail and like dealing with pieces of paper. I hate mail. So there were some of those pieces of it were really, really hard. And I was very happy to, ultimately roll the business into Omni and let some of that go. So, but I learned it's a hustle. I had a lot of clients in Denver because that's where I started. And then my now husband, he had a job opportunity in Salt Lake. So we actually moved to Salt Lake, and I flew back to Denver every single week and parked a car at the airport, drove around Denver, and tried to start building clients in Salt Lake as well. But what I learned is it's a hustle. I mean, it's nothing like you just show up at your day job and you have a regular paycheck that comes every time. Clients are late, and then I would be trying to figure out how to pay my recruiters. And it's just, when you're talking very small business as a 20-something-year-old, it was like impossible to get any like meaningful line of credit or something. So
Oh yeah.
it was a hustle, and it was a learning
I had a
experience.
friend text me the other day. He goes, "Hey man, what's going on? How you doing?" And I played him this.
Hustling, every day I'm hustling.
Yep.
And so that's what I played him, and he's like, "Love it." And so I went to YouTube. Obviously, I clipped like just that little piece there, but he would call me later on. He goes, "You're out of your mind." He goes, "You just couldn't tell me I'm working hard." I go, "Hey, I wanted the impact. I want to tell you I'm hustling over here." But
I'm not just working hard, I'm hustling. Like
yeah,
it's
I'm
a whole
hustling.
different, it's a whole different
Man.
animal.
Boy, you know what? I want to talk about that for a little bit, because you just hit on gold. What's your how do you define the difference between hard work and hustling?
I think hustling has unpredictable results. I think you're out there scraping for it and you don't know what you're going to find. I think hard work in a general sense has probably, I think, at least as I would think of it, there's kind of more predictable results associated with it. Like I do this and it's hard and this is the outcome. Like a lot of day jobs are hard, but at the end of the day, you have, your paycheck is the
Yeah.
same. You kind of move on this predictable path, whereas hustling, I think of that as like you kill what you eat. Like you're out there looking for it, finding it, scraping, lifting up stones, and sometimes you find nothing. Like, I mean, I remember, I'd have times where I'd be like, my clients have not paid me. Like I have, like I've paid all my money to my people, and like I have
Yep.
$0 for the next week, right? And so I think that's how I think of hustling. Like you're really out fighting for it, and the results aren't guaranteed by any stretch of the imagination, but you do it anyway, right? Like there's a passion and a fire there. Otherwise you don't hustle. The people that don't have that passion or fire, that they don't hustle. They might work hard, but they're not out there hustling, because you won't if you don't have that kind of fire in your belly.
Well, I would not change a thing you said. I agree with you 100%. Like if somebody asks me the definition in the future, I'm going to play this clip.
Perfect.
Because if I don't think I could have put it any better. And it's funny, I have young kids, right? My oldest daughter, not so young anymore. She's 28. She's married. She and her husband are off to a great life. My son is 26. He had a career change about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, but he's working it and doing great, finding some success. And my youngest is 21. She's a full-time esthetician. She's also finishing her degree in business. So
Wonderful.
she's a hard worker. But it's interesting because my middle and my youngest all work for entrepreneurs. They work for, they're not working in a big company of thousands of people. They work for small businesses. And they come home with a lot of opinions and a lot of, I can't believe they did this and I can't believe they did that. And as much as I want to be a supportive parent, which I am, I'm an ear for them anytime they need it. But I also want to give them the perspective of the business owner. And I say things like to them like, hey, you came home today. You were done. Your book was done, right? Yeah. My son was at one point working at a gym training clients in rotational sports, baseball and golf, very, very specific. And I would say to him, hey, you're done. Okay, maybe he didn't like what was going on, but I said, what else did you think about when you got home? I don't know, tomorrow? What time I got to get up? What's happening? Who's coming? Yeah. Did you think about the rent for the building? No. Did you think about the electricity? No. Did you think about the lease on all the equipment that's there? No. Think about the broken equipment. Who's going to fix it? No. Did you look at, membership? Is it up? Is it down? Did you look at, sort of space and occupancy? And I went on ad nauseum. And I said to him, these people are hustling. They're not going to be perfect. No small business owner is perfect. And every small business owner learns through experience, through mistakes. They're not bad people. Some of them might be. I mean, that's certainly possible, but I tend to not want to think and lead with people are bad people, because then I wall off my opportunities to meet the great people. So I give everybody the benefit of the doubt to start. And someone once said to me, see, the difference between you and I is, to me, everybody's an idiot. Everybody's no good. Everybody's going to screw me over. And someday I'm pleasantly surprised that I'm good. You think everything's the opposite, and you wind up with tire marks on your back. And I said, yeah, but I've picked up 100 more people than you did along the way who were fantastic.
Totally
and he goes, yeah, I'm not
agree with
willing.
you.
He goes, yeah, I'm not willing to take that risk. And I said, I am. And mostly it's worked out for me.
I totally agree. I think you
Yeah.
have to start at your baseline is benefit of the doubt.
Of
And
course.
let people prove you wrong, not
Yeah.
the other way around. I feel like I'd be miserable if I just assumed everybody was, out for the worst, as opposed to, vice versa.
I did something crazy last month. You're going to love this on this topic. A friend of mine, Adam, who was on show number 2, Adam Curry, he renewed his vows with his wife after being married for 5 years. They got married, they joke, they go, we got married by a dog walker. It was like somebody who had the right to marry them in Austin. Yeah. They've moved out to another town. They wanted to be married in front of the eyes of God. So we went down there for the celebration. The day before the ceremony, they had an out-of-towner little welcome reception at a winery. It was really nice. It's a beautiful afternoon. We met on the patio. It was covered. It was great. And he's introducing me. It's small, 20 people, okay? 20 people there. And so we get introduced to people, and my friend Adam says, hey, Vic, this is Paul. He's the oil baron. That's what he calls him, the oil baron. He's a guy, Adam's great at making nicknames for people. He's funny, but he's in oil and gas, successful guy. They met by chance, maybe 8-9 months prior, became very close. And so the oil baron and I start chit-chatting. And his girlfriend comes over, Ashley, and my wife, and she start chit-chatting. And I don't know, we were there 2 hours. I don't think we talked to anybody else. And it was going, right?
Yeah.
And so, wow, this guy's super cool. He's really nice, and we have a lot in common. And so this conversation was so easy. And my wife says, hey, we got this Airbnb around the corner, not far from here. And I know we have different dinner reservations, but if you want to stop by for a drink afterwards, why don't you come by the house? We got this cute little place. It was just all remodeled. It's really nice. And so they're like, okay. So I stop at the liquor store. I said, what do you like to drink? I like Dos Equis. I like a little tequila. Okay, I get everything. And Paul and Ashley come walking through the door. We had met them only a few hours prior. We spent 90 to 120 minutes chit-chatting. The only thing we knew is that we knew Adam and Tina, his wife. So we knew we were in company of good people.
Yeah.
And he walks in and goes, can't believe I'm doing this. Haven't done this since college. Haven't met somebody and went and had a drink with them, within an hour knowing them in college. And we sat up talking till 2:00 in the morning. And so that would have been an opportunity, Courtney, where if I just thought the guy was no good and I held myself off, turns out he has a ranch 45 minutes where we have property out in West Texas. He has a lot of the same interests I do. He's a real personable guy. Next time I'm out at my property, I'm going to drive out to where he is out in Abilene. We're going to check it out. He's got a great place out there. But I prefer to operate that way. I know you operate that way. Yeah. And there's a big benefit to that there. So I appreciate your thoughts on that. But so where were we here? Let's get back to Omni. You're at Omni now, and you've been growing. Yeah, you've been growing Omni quite nicely, and you've been there since 2016. When did you become co-head in charge here, co-CEO? How did that come about?
About a year ago, actually. So yeah, it's been about a year. So it, we kind of formed, I would say that we had a big boom in COVID. Maybe I should back up a little bit. So, big boom in COVID. We were already 100% remote. So we were just well positioned when COVID happened to pick up a lot of work, and people needed, work from home customer service like yesterday. So, yeah. So that was a huge growth period for us. The world comes full circle. So Chris Carrington came back, and the original person who hired me as an intern came on as our CEO.
Holy cow!
It's a crazy world. So so he took that role. I moved into the COO role. My now co-CEO Karen, she was chief customer officer, and we kind of more formally built out the executive team, I would say. And so, we're of the general mindset that you just can't be the same. It's important for people to shift and take on new things, right? So, kind of over the course of Omni, I've been the COO, and then I became the CIO, we called it Chief Innovation Officer, but I took over the whole digital team. And then last year, kind of, heading into winter, we kind of felt like it's probably time. Chris is, he's really more of a board of directors and fishing, heading to that part of his life, right?
Good for him.
So it's probably time to, transition that role to Karen and I, who really, led the day-to-day operations anyway. So we decided, let's do co-CEOs, and then we can, we can share the job, have a better quality of life. And so that was kind of how that came about. Her and I, we came up with that on our own, pitched it to Rob Duncan and Chris Carrington, who are the board of directors, and said, this is what we think will work best. And they said, I mean, sounds as good as anything else. And so that was kind of how that came about. And it's been awesome. Honestly, no complaints whatsoever, because it's, back to one of your your question a few minutes ago about how does it feel to be, an entrepreneur or solopreneur. Yeah. It's really hard. It's really hard, and it's lonely. And I think, people say that all the time on podcasts, but it's very hard because there's no one that worries about those things with you. And so I'd say, having had that experience, it's really wonderful having a co-CEO, because I have someone to worry about things with and go back and forth with. And Karen and I actually started at Alpine Access the same month. So we've worked together, that long. And so we've got a lot of history together. I'd say we've worked through a lot of bumps in the road over the years. We've really grown up together, right? I've spent the better part of my adult life working with her off and on. So I think it's important to know we had a really strong relational foundation going into this, right? We didn't meet a couple months ago and then become co-CEOs, but it's really been a wonderful structure for kind of the same reasons that being an entrepreneur can be just really challenging.
I could see why that would work between you two. She's really great. I have a lot of respect for her as well. Presents well, sharp, but approachable,
Yeah.
Like you. I understand, not directly, but indirectly, about having a sounding board. Well, that's not really true. I understand directly as well, but specific to my business, the founder of it is a guy named Steve Gearhart. I don't think you've met Steve yet.
I think I have.
Oh no, you did. You met him at Compass.
Yes. You met him
at Compass, yeah. So Steve spent 14 years of the 24 years, maybe 15 of the 24, going to clients, trying to win business, trying to figure out what happened in that meeting or on that call. Back then, of course, it was all, face-to-face, hand-to-hand combat, and getting in a car and being completely on his own and having to process the whole thing and being completely quiet. Tim and I join on as partners. This is late 2016, early 2017. And we come out of a client meeting, enterprise client, real big customer, thousands of people in the contact center. And we're driving back in the car, or maybe we have a follow-up call the next day, or immediately, like if we're on a call, the second call's over, like I spin up a bridge and like, well, what'd you guys think? Steve's stone cold quiet. And he finally said to us, you don't understand. I've spent 14 years trying to figure this out in my head all by myself. Like I've never had this. I've never had the ability to bounce it off. Well, he loves it now, obviously. He's learned to not only love it, but count on it. And I could tell you that working in corporate America, it's an interesting conundrum. You aspire to have a big role and harness your leadership skills. Mm-hmm. And here I'm going to make a segue. I'm going to give a shout out to Coach Tony, twrmindset.com, because if you don't have somebody you can talk to certain things about, as in a leadership position of many people, not a lot of opportunities for you to talk about stuff you're thinking about. So let's unpack that a second. Your boss is your boss, and it takes a unique character to be able to approach your boss with a problem where they may, and you may not have the confidence to approach them with a problem to think maybe this person thinks I'm already supposed to be solving that. That's number one. The people who report to you, sometimes you can't bare your soul to them because you're the leader of the pack and they got to see you as the general of the army, and nobody wants to think that the general has, an empty magazine, right? And then you go sideways on the peers, and sometimes in the biggest of organizations, everybody's jockeying for the next job and they're looking for a spot. It's competitive, right? So you're kind of on an island in these spots. And for anybody listening, I'm certainly not suggesting anybody should feel sorry for the leadership positions I've had, but there is, and I'm very proud of them, and I did the best that I could, and I think I've done a good job and have helped a lot of people along the way. But it is a lonely spot. So when you have what you have with Karen, it's very, very unique. I leveraged executive coaching for that outlet for many, many years. I was first introduced to an executive coach in 2001. And that's when my eyes got opened up, because I could talk to this guy about anything. And it wasn't psychology for that problem I might have had with my parents or my spouse or something. This was like real good professional talk. And this person really, really, really helped me. And I had stayed engaged. And then I have a very good friend of 40 some odd years, Tony Palmucci, who transitioned his business. He actually went to Tony Robbins seminars to learn more about how to help his business, and then said, what would it be like to work for this guy? Like, how do I get to work for Tony as a coach? I've really been coaching people my whole life. And through the Robbins organization, they said, go do all this stuff. And when you do all this stuff and get all this certification, you've coached thousands and thousands of hours, come back. And he did all that stuff. And then he worked for Robbins for 4 or 5 years, built up his reps, as he called it. He stamped out the license plates, right? Because he did his 10,000 coaching calls and then some, and then has since moved on. And he specializes in our space, in the channel and things like that. And he's amazing. And gosh, we'll have 3-hour phone calls sometimes. But so talk to me more about your experience coming up. I mean, the fact that you guys put that together on your own is genius, because there's a trust there of working so closely together. Tell me more about this dynamic, about how this works.
Well, so, one, we each kind of have our sandboxes, and I think that is important in terms of, she's responsible for delivery and corporate services. I'm responsible for sales and technology. And so, there is a clear delineation of kind of where each of us are responsible. And then, we both understand, of course, that fundamentally, though, we're both responsible for the, financial health and growth of the company. And so, I think that's an important note, right? You can't just be co-CEOs and it's like everybody's in charge of everything. So, but at the same time that, we certainly, obviously, there's a tremendous amount of overlap in all of, the way the business functions. But it gives us a great opportunity to just bring challenges and solve them together, right? So whether it's a technology challenge around a device deployment, right, that maybe impacts her training schedule, that's something we're going to come together and get creative and solve together. And so I think, the other piece to it that I think you hit on that's super important is there's nothing competitive about it. Like, we're the co-CEOs. So there's, I mean, I'm not vying for her territory and she's not vying for my territory. There's no, there's kind of like, there's nowhere to go from here. We're at the top of the mountain, at least as it relates to Omni. And so I think that changes the dynamic a lot too, right? So I don't think the structure works as well if the environment feels competitive, because you're just not going to bring challenges or problems kind of open and honestly and authentically to the other person. And I think that's where, a coach is very like, you have nothing to lose by bringing anything you're saying to the coach, right? Because it's, it's a totally open, honest, authentic relationship, or it should be, or else, you're wasting your money.
Of course.
But I think because there's nothing like really remaining that's competitive there, that strips away any need to hold back or feel like, kind of have a fear-based response in terms of, should I tell her this, or, should I bring this problem? Like, it's easier just to bring the problem. Maybe just by saying it out loud, I find the solution, I figured it out, right? So, so I think that's been a really important dynamic, and that didn't happen overnight. We've been in this structure for a year, and I think it definitely has taken some time to kind of settle into that and just kind of recognize that, I am way better off when she's succeeding, and she is way better off when I'm succeeding. And anything less than that, we're just, we're just being immature and selfish, because that is the reality of, like, my life when she's doing well, my life is easier, and vice versa. So, so I think, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think from a dynamic standpoint, just the fact that we can feel really confident standing on equal footing, and there's not another step to take, that has changed everything about how well we can work together.
I think it's successful in your case for a couple of reasons. One, you guys came up with the idea together and pitched it and sold it, but I think that was on a bed of trust. It was on a bed of a relationship, and the bank of your relationship had so many deposits over the years that even if there was a tough time or a disagreement or withdrawal here or there, wouldn't matter. The account would still be strong.
Yeah.
I don't think you could hire two people off the street and say you're co-CEOs.
No.
That's almost impossible. And when I was introduced to you both and you were co-CEOs, and probably up until 15 minutes ago, I didn't really understand it. I understand it completely now, having now had the opportunity to get to know both of you and the way you break out sort of the span of control in the areas of responsibilities, backed by the many, many years of your relationship and looking out for one another. And that fact that you can say out loud and mean it, and everybody who sees it and hears it can know what I know, and that, when she succeeds, you succeed. And that's unbelievable. And I hope, if anything, if anybody takes anything away from this, maybe not that you'll be co-CEO or co of anything with somebody in a company, but that is the premise and the foundation of any success.
Yeah.
You raise yourself by raising others. And when you root for somebody else, you're rooting for yourself at the same time. And when you're in a position to serve and put people first and help them be successful, your success will multiply exponentially. And I'm happy to have the opportunity to learn. So now that I put all the pieces together, since when did we meet? In December of last year?
Yeah.
When we first met, so, I was like giving a little side eye, like, okay, like, what's going on here? Each of them, did it not like them all fully? Like, because anybody on the outside might look at that and go, wow, why do we have two CEOs? But this is a design.
Yeah. This
is a partnership. This is something way bigger than somebody not being able to choose one or the other. This was a purposeful design, and I'm impressed. This is unbelievable. This is great. So for anybody listening out there, like, the takeaway here is the level of partnership here, and the level of supporting your colleague or helping your other person succeed and rising to the top together and taking away that competitive edge and everybody winning. People could take this away. They take away something huge. What would you like to add to that?
I think what I would add is, it's, probably the one other thing is, her and I are very similar in a lot of ways. We obviously get along very well, but we're very different in a lot of ways, in the sense, I'm a little more on the visionary, larger. As I mentioned earlier, I hate mail. I hate, I hated doing any of the accounting. So I am not necessarily the detail oriented one. Karen is very detail oriented and less, kind of seeing the big picture of the future. So I think there's a lot of, that's an important note as well. And we both know that about each other, right? That if you ask me about something that's really deep in the weeds, I may not know the answer, right? But I've got this picture for where I see all of this stuff going and what that looks
Yep.
like, which is why I'm responsible for sales and technology, and she's responsible for delivery and corporate services, right? So I think when you think about that, that's how it applies to us. But I think how it applies to what you just said is, we've got to figure out what people's strengths are around us, and
Yeah.
really appreciate those and lean into those in terms of the people around us. And if we do that, especially where we're weaker, then absolutely, right? The rising tide rises all boats. And so
That's right.
I think that's a really important note, that we shouldn't all be good at the same thing, right? A good team has different skill sets and capabilities, and they see things differently, and leaning into each other's differences is actually the most important thing, as opposed to the similarities.
If everybody's an electrician, we can't build a house with 100 of those,
Exactly.
right? Everybody's got a role in a trade and everything to do, and it's no different in the corporate world or in anywhere in life. And the best teams are made of diverse thoughts, diverse talents. You've met Tim Reese, right? You met him
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
Tim and I have been working together for 17 years. And when we joined Steve at D&M, Steve had really only known me, and he said, hey, I want you to come in as a partner. And I said, yeah, but we got to bring Tim as well. That's why I said he loves and he's great at all the stuff I suck at. I'm horrible at it. He's really good at it. And I went through a whole list of things that he's really good at. And Steve said, okay, I'm in. I get it. Yeah, those things are important. So that's great. I wanna talk a little bit more about Omni, if you don't mind, because
Sure.
I really love the company. And so Omni Interactions is a business process outsourcer, staff augmentation organization largely for contact centers. But your model is unique in that you hire people who might not necessarily want to put 40 hours. They can, but they might not necessarily want to put in 40 hours with a single customer, so to speak. So you provide this massive flexibility for a workforce. Can you tell your story a little bit more deeply to the audience about what Omni does and how you handle it? And maybe some of the listeners might go, hey, I'm going to go check that out. I'd like to get some shifts.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really a fractional solution. Um, so all of our workers are part-time. Really, I mean, they're really gig workers. And so for us, we kind of see it as, we're a platform that connects, you know, companies that need customer service support to workers who are out there that have the right skills, background, expertise, brand affinity, those types of things. And then, we help manage really the scheduling around that, the delivery, all of those pieces. So we've got, a lot of, Fortune 1000 clients that come to us and say, we've got huge gaps, we've got big seasonal spikes, or we've got gaps kind of throughout the week or the month, that just really a more traditional BPO that's hiring full-time people just can't fill the way as efficiently as we can. And so
Yeah.
for us, we look at a lot of things around, let's talk about a healthcare organization where maybe Mondays and Tuesdays are very, very heavy. This happens in financial services too, right? They're closed on the weekends. Mondays and Tuesdays are busy. Friday afternoons are busy, and lunches are busy. And so if you try to staff that with a bunch of people that work 9 to 5, you've got too few people answering the phones on Monday and too many people answering the phones on Friday. And by the way, they're taking breaks and lunches at the same time that the patients are taking their breaks and lunches from their job and trying to call in. And so what we do is we try to build a solution, right, where maybe we've got, if we've got, instead of 20 full-time workers, we've got 40 half-time workers. So we can overschedule on a Monday and have 30 people answering the phone Monday, and then, 7 people answering the phone Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but maybe 10 that actually, come in just for a lunch, kind of for that lunch window. And so we can really operate very, very efficiently for our clients to make sure that those calls get answered when the calls are coming in, and build really unique schedules. And so, that's a long-winded way of saying,
No,
at the end of the day, I mean, we answer, we help our clients get their phones answered, but we do it in a really kind of unique way that delivers really excellent results because, all of our workers choose their own schedules. They choose the client they want to work on. And so it really affords us the opportunity to find people that maybe wouldn't go get a more traditional kind of customer service job.
Yep.
It's really people that are semi-retired, stay-at-home parent, people with disabilities, a lot of military spouses for the same reasons I mentioned earlier, or veterans
Sure.
with disabilities that need a more flexible work environment where they can choose their own schedule, work, roughly half time, and do that for a client that they really enjoy. So it's a really, really neat model, and we've seen tremendous success with it. We built it from scratch, kind of based on all of our previous experiences, and have fine-tuned it over the years into something that we're very proud of.
Hey, the other side of that coin from the worker perspective is talk about a little job security here, right? Most people, let's say they work in a call center, they go get a job, they work in a particular call center, and even if they're remote, let's say they're remote, they get on, they put on the headset, and they're answering customer service calls, or maybe they're a customer service manager. And if that company has a downturn, they're out looking for a new job. And so the feedback that we've received, and it's not only been through you, but through our experience in this space and actually talking to the workers, is that they go, you know what? I'm not going to deal with that anymore. I'm going to, instead of working 40 hours a week, I'm going to choose 4 different companies and I'm going to give them each 10 hours a week. And so now while my check still comes from Omni in this case, my reliance and my income stream is broken up in quarters. So if company A all of a sudden kills my hours, I'll raise my hand at Omni and say I need more shifts, right? And I could either choose another 4th company or I can get more hours with the 3 hours I have. And when you talk about staying up at night and, there's a lot going on in the economy and people worrying about jobs and the success of companies or the lack thereof, if that's your gig, if that's your job, you want to work at home, you need flexibility. Aside from the performance and the money saved, and we talk about the fresh ears and the fresh eyes, it's hard being on a call center. That's a
It is a
grueling
hard
job.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. It's a lot. And people are fresh for 3 or 4 hours, and then you get declining returns. People get testy, that's when sort of the patience wears down, takes a special skill to do that for 8 hours a day. So now you're delivering people at their best, right? All the time. Yeah. You're delivering people with a diverse sense of problem solving and income stream. So their problem, they're feeling good about it. So not only on the employer side, but the employee side, the worker really has this ultimate flexibility and has built in another level of resiliency in their income stream.
Yeah, I would just correct one thing. We actually, one thing that's different about us, we only allow the gig workers can only work on 1 gig at a time because they
I didn't
are
know that.
often complex, right? There's, sometimes there can be, a lot to kind of certify on to make sure that they can look and feel and sound exactly like, what another like someone that works directly for that company would sound like, and so and be able to provide the same level of service. So what we do see though is that people work concurrent gigs, so they'll they'll be on a tax gig that ends in April, and then they start on a new gig after that. And so
interesting.
But that, I think, from a quality standpoint, and then the other thing is kind of back to, as we built this, how we knew it would be successful. But there's a quality element to it that if you have to, if you're taking calls for 4 different companies, you just cannot possibly remember all of those policies and procedures and deliver that. And so that's definitely one of the challenges, I think, with some of the other companies that do this.
Yeah.
The other piece is they're going to pick and choose hours. So, the schedules and the reliability of when, like a client says, we need 1,000 hours delivered, this week, and we need 700 of those on Monday, because that's when the calls come in. We can't have people thinking, well, I'll pick up shifts here and here and here, and then I'll decide on that day which one I work, and then we have a huge a big shrink, and we don't actually deliver. So, so some of the things, as we looked at, some of the other companies out there in this space that do the same thing that we wanted to do differently, that we felt like, actually are better for the worker, because they get a lot of consistency. So one thing that's super cool is we just kind of looked at our tenure, and After 45 days of production, the average tenure is more than 600 days for our agents.
Oh,
So
wow. That's
we
fantastic.
see that churn early, like everybody does, right? People
Sure.
start a class and they're like, this isn't for me, or they take their first handful of calls and they just don't like it. Everyone sees that churn, but the people that really get into production and taking those calls are very sticky because it has everything that they need. They can choose their schedule. They know they like it. They start to get to know the other workers and their peers on the account, and then they become very, very sticky, which is super cool and unique in this industry.
That's a great differentiation. I wish I could tell you I threw a softball at you on purpose, but I was mistaken because of the other models out there.
Yep.
Thank you for clarifying that. How do people advance inside of being a gig worker? Is there a limitation to their advancement? Do they get upskilled? Like, how does that work for people who are interested in becoming a worker on the platform?
So I think at a fundamental level, the individuals that want to be gig workers have prioritized their work-life balance over maybe a more traditional form of the word advancement.
Okay.
Um, they're there for a lot of them maybe drive Uber also, or they do other. They're also a freelance graphic designer, right? They have
Sure.
they've decided to piece their income together in a way that they can support themselves and they have the freedom to live however they want to live, right? They're choosing their own schedule, whether that's, they're caring for someone or they themselves have health issues, things like that. But I would say
Yeah.
kind of what we strive for is to, make sure that, we deliver a platform and a support network for these individuals where they have all the tools and resources they need to be successful on the account that they've selected, and that
Got it.
we work very hard to make sure that we're managing the number of gig workers on an account versus the number of hours that are available, so that people have you know we continuously look at how many hours people are working on average, and we're continuously kind of evolving how many workers we need to meet the client number of hours so that everyone gets the hours that they're hoping for, right? We don't want to be in a situation where people wanted 20 hours, but everyone can only schedule 10.
Got it.
So we try very hard to try to balance all of those things so that it is a great place for people who just want some consistency and some part-time work that they can manage in their own life, whatever that looks like, as opposed to kind of that more traditional concept
Yeah,
of
it's
advancement.
huge value there. Absolutely. Hey, I want to ask you to tell one more story
Okay.
before we wrap up tonight. You recently did something, and I've told this story, man, if I've told it once, I've told it 25 times. And I think you already know what it is. You got creative reaching out to a potential customer, and you made a little video and you did some stuff, and I'm not going to give it all away, but it was a very unique approach. And I just want to expose to the audience here your craftiness, your intuition, you're willing to do what it takes and inspire people to do things, if not exactly like it, similar, to stand out and be different. So can you tell us that story? I think you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I'm going to refrain from using the client name because we're still
Yeah, that's fine.
contracted.
You can do that.
But
That's why I didn't do that.
so this was a prospect actually we talked to originally back in 2019, and it's a company that fits right in line with kind of the military, affinity, affiliated, and um, I run a lot, as I mentioned. I listen to a lot of books. I listen to a lot of books by Navy SEALs and other,
Yeah.
Army Rangers, things like that. So it's one of those companies you just keep hearing about, and you just go, "Gosh, they have to be our clients." It's kind of, we started to call them the white whale, which actually is not a great analogy, but
Okay.
the you just it's a long time coming. I just say all that because we had talked to them. They actually went with a different outsourcer and they had a terrible experience, brought it all back in-house. This kind of all happened over the years, and I kept running into actual people from this company. So I was in Salt Lake, not this past year but the year before, for a conference, and the person who was the CEO at the time was there. And it was just like, oh my gosh, this person from this company. And then happenstance, at the same conference we met at Sundance, another person from this company, and we had we had how many rooms booked? Like all but
Almost
10.
all of it.
Almost
Yeah,
all
almost
of it.
all of
So
it. Yeah.
in the sliver of rooms that remained to the general public, another person from this
Holy
company who I
cow.
recognized sits down. We're kind of sitting at lunch, and I'm facing, it's a booth where there's lots of 2-person tables, right? And so I'm in the
Yeah.
chair facing the booth. This person sits at the table next to Karen, in the booth. And I'm looking at Karen going,
You recognize them.
I recognize him. I read his book, and I'm looking at Karen going, you're trying, like, you get real excited, and it's like, but you don't want to make a big deal. So,
Yeah.
So anyway, I started to just feel like the universe is stalking me with these people. And every time I send a nice follow-up email that says, we'd love to, do your customer service, et cetera, and just wasn't getting anywhere. So I thought, you know what, it's time to do something totally different. So I'm going to make a video. They're not our client now. We're not getting any response from them. So something has to give, right? It's, so I made, my husband helped me. We made a video out. We've got, about 55 acres here. And so we made a video of all the things kind of, of different things to do while interacting with this product. And so, it's, again, very military oriented. So we got, I got my pistol on my side, and out walking the back 40 and cruising around the mule, the side by side, things like that. And so, and then at the end, kind of put together, we'll donate $2,500 to the, to their foundation if they just take a meeting with us, right? Just take a meeting, and we'll donate $2,500, and then we'll donate 1% of any revenue should they become a client. And so, anyway, it took about a month, but it worked, and they took a meeting with us, and we've had some great conversations, and we're, looking forward to moving forward with them as a client.
Wow.
So,
so cool. Well, no matter what happens, judge not the man in the arena or the person in the arena, right? The doer of deeds, right? People out there, taking the shrapnel, so to speak. So I love that story. You told it well without, exposing the product or the client. And I certainly won't divulge that. But that's tenacity. That's, that story sealed the deal for me with you, by the way.
that's the hustle.
It was just, that's the hustle. Courtney, that's the hustle. And you're still hustling. Every day I'm hustling.
Every day I'm hustling.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Hey, this is a perfect time for us to wrap. Let's, I have a little bit left in my glass. I'll do another last toast to you. Cheers. And I will say thank you for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. I like you even more now. I didn't think that was even possible. But
Great,
I'm
likewise.
excited. Thank you. I'm excited for this episode to come out and for the audience to get to know you a little bit. Your discipline, your hustle, your attitude, it's infectious, and just keep doing what you're doing. I'm a huge fan.
Thank you.
Have an awesome night. Thank you.
Yeah, you too.
Bye. Hey, folks. Thanks for tuning into the show. You can find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, the Podcast Index, and Podcasting 2.0. We'd really appreciate if you download Fountain, find us there, and support us via Value for Value. We hope you enjoy the show. Happy listening.